Over in the Giants' backfield, Jay, Motor Singletary dominates first-team snaps. He played all but 4 snaps in the first half. Tyrone Tracy deals with the ankle injury. This is a backfield that's not pretty. His offense is certainly not pretty from what we saw from Daniel Jones. But Devin Singletary, the pathway is there for him to be a true, somewhat workhorse back that maybe, considering at cost, brings a little bit of value if you need a guy that simply plays.
Yeah, and he plays, which is the main thing, and he's largely, somewhat unopposed in that backfield. The injury to Tyrone Tracy, not as serious as expected initially, but look, he's a Dable guy. He's played with Dable. I don't think they're going to want Daniel Jones to drop back 45 times, especially based on what we saw on the weekend. So right. I think this offense is going to be, it's a lot of going to be targeting Malik Neighbors and then running the ball with Devin Singletary. And the offensive line isn't good in New York, but at least it is better than last year. There is a bit more confidence there.
You know what? I completely agree with you. It's also one of the reasons why I like Tyrone Tracy. Connor and I both, he's one of our sleepers this year. But the fact is that, and I don't want to just dump on Daniel Jones, whatever. He had a bad day at the office, right? But we've seen him be a productive quarterback in the NFL, and I think they'll fix it. But I will say, if you're Brian Daboll and you're watching that tape, because Daniel Jones had just 2 brutal mistakes in that game. He threw the pick 6 from the end zone, and another interception that was just bad, poor decision making. So I think if you're Brian Daboll, you want to try to simplify the offense. And that means running the ball or dumping it off to Devin Singletary, Tyrone Tracy, 2 very good pass-catching running backs as well, and try to limit what you're putting on Daniel Jones' shoulder until he gets his confidence back up. That's the thing to me. It's I don't think it's nearly as bad as Sam Darnold or Zach Wilson, but that was one of the issues I always had with Darnold or Wilson with the Jets. I just think their confidence got so shot because the media was so brutal, their offensive line was so brutal, and I think that's happened somewhat to Daniel Jones after last year. Just Daniel Jones having the same year that he had last year, but doing it in Pittsburgh, or Cleveland is not the same as having that kind of year in New York.
Yeah, I think it was mainly the O-line. I think he just got rattled and he started seeing ghosts because he was under pressure in sub 2 seconds. It was completely insane. I think the thing with Jones that's an issue too is that, 2 years ago he was really good. He finished as QB9 in fantasy. He had 15 passing touchdowns. All of his value, his surplus value, was 700 rushing yards and 7 rushing TDs, and that's what you worry a bit, I think, off the ACL is maybe he doesn't have the same level of mobility.
An interesting scenario, guys, from the weekend. Zamir White plays deep into the game for the Raiders. Madison took the passing downs, and on top of this, the Raiders also named Gardner Minshew their starting quarterback. Matthew, the Zamir White case is really interesting because there's not a lot of running backs in fantasy that are playing this deep into a preseason game that go on to have a great fantasy season. But at the same time, Antonio Pierce is a little unconventional. They were 6.5-point favorites in this game. We knew they were going to play more noteworthy players deeper into the game. How do you evaluate this one in a backfield that it can be hard to figure out?
Which it is super weird because one of the teams that did play their starters, long into a preseason game, was the Raiders with Josh Jacobs 2 years ago. Hall of Fame game. And I'll own this. Josh Jacobs was on my hate list that year, and there were a few reasons why. And one of them was that I was just it's a 1-year deal. They're going to just run him into the ground. They don't care. They're playing him in the Hall of Fame game with all their actual starters on the bench. This is going to be a committee, Josh Jacobs isn't going to be used in the passing game. They got Amir Abdullah. They want to use him, blah, blah, blah. I said all this stuff, and I could not have been more wrong. Could not have been more wrong because Josh Jacobs, despite playing in the third quarter of that Hall of Fame game and with the second string backups, ended up having a monster year.
He won the rushing title.
He won the I was just going to say, he won the FedEx rushing title. He very graciously came on our show at the Super Bowl, and I was able to look him in the eye and apologize to him, for doubting him, and he graciously accepted the apology and laughed. It helps when you're sitting there with the big FedEx rushing title, the ground yards trophy. But it's weird, right? It is not something you often see, but the Raiders are one of those teams that has done that. Having said this about Zamir White, Alexander Mattison played more than I thought he was going to in this. You know what I mean? And I worry that Zamir White, we have a very small sample size.
Yes.
Right, of him being a productive RB1. Very small sample size. And it's weird because I mentioned Madison, but everyone last year was crowning Alexander Mattison. Oh, Dalvin Cook is gone. Madison's going to be the guy for the Vikings. And he just wasn't good. He wasn't ready for prime time. Zamir White was a day 3 pick, right?
Yep.
He day 3 pick, not a guy that came into the league with a ton of hype. And so he got an opportunity. But listen, Dylan Lobby is having a really nice camp as well. They clearly like Madison, what they've seen there. Zamir White makes me nervous this year in terms of current ADP.
The problem is the cost. But, Jay, I'll throw it to you like this. We know Madison is not good. We have seen it over and over again. We don't know if Zamir White isn't good. Yep. So I'd still rather bet on the guy that we think can be good from 3 games, 4 games.
Yeah, 4 games.
But if you're looking at this backfield and thinking like there's an answer here, there is clear risk in the situation.
Yeah, I think people have perhaps just assumed that the last 4 games of last season is just what Zamir White is going to be, where he has 20, 25 carries in some of these games. Like, that wasn't the real team at that point. Like, it's not like it just became Zamir White's show because that's what they wanted to happen. Josh Jacobs was injured. He wasn't there. Zamir White was getting backed up by like Brandon Bolden. There was no one else there. This year they come in with a plan. They brought in Madison. It's also a bit of a concern to me that we all trust Kevin O'Connell. Kevin O'Connell was using Madison even at the end of the season, a bit less, but like we didn't understand why Ty Chandler wasn't getting more work. So maybe this is something the coaches like about Alexander Madison.
Okay.
For sure. The other thing that I'll just mention real quickly, some news that the other thing is that last year, to your point about like they just didn't have anyone, like they had AOC as their starting quarterback. They have Gardner they've officially named Gardner Minshew as the starting quarterback of the Raiders. And look, Minshew isn't great, okay? but he's also not terrible. Like I think he is a legit upgrade over Aiden O'Connell. I think Gardner Minshew is a legit NFL starting caliber quarterback. Like, is he a good starting quarterback? No. But like he's a reasonably professional starting quarterback who, by the way, last year, if Tyson Goodson like catches that ball, Tyler Goodson, whatever. I like he dropped the ball, I forgot his name. But whatever. My point is like Gardner Minshew was one drop pass away from leading a team to the playoffs last year.
Yep. Now you could say Gardner Minshew, that was a bad throw, and that's what Gardner Minshew does, and that's why they missed the playoffs.
It was slightly behind him,
the thing with Gardner Minshew,
that was a catchable ball, though.
The guy should have caught it. It should have been a better throw.
It was a little behind him. Yeah, it wasn't a great throw.
The thing with Minshew is that he is bad in a way that is okay for fantasy, because he's bad in a way where it's like, how did you get strip sacked by 2 guys at the same time? How did you not see either of them coming? Yeah, he is chaos. He'll throw bad picks, but he also puts the ball up for grabs, and he'll be able to support Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers.
He's like the Jorts version of Dobbs, honestly, at times. Like Jorts and long hair version of Dobbs, the pass.
I kind of like that comparison. I will, but yes, I think when I tweeted this out is that naming Mark Minshew. He's only for whatever, deep 2 quarterback league, super flex leagues.
Our awful league.
Huh?
He'll be very relevant in our terrible show league.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But he is, but I think to the extent that you've invested in Devontae Adams or Jacoby Myers or Brock Bowers, I think Minshew over O'Connell is good for the fantasy value of those guys.
I completely agree.
Especially Devontae Adams. Okay, you have a chance to win $1 million in the NBC sweepstakes on Yahoo Fantasy. Just download the redesigned Yahoo Fantasy app or go to NBCSports.com/fantasymillion for additional details. What are you waiting for? Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotoWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Roto-World fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.